All right, my friends, it is now time for part two of the hypothesis Nephilim to Babel. And this is where it gets really interesting, at least for me, when putting this together and with my research partner. As a Christian, this is a big deal. And this could be the keystone or the key to unlock this whole situation. I think for me, this is what gives the hypothesis real credibility, in my opinion. So let's get right to it. As we said in part one, in the introduction, that we should not assume much of anything, and that we can't really separate what you would call nuts and bolts physical objects from the more high strangeness, a more unexplainable, more quote unquote spiritual or supernatural looking aspects, or the woo, as the folks say nowadays. We can't really separate those out. It's a false choice. And as a corollary of that, we, especially us Christians who want to discern things properly, hopefully, even if you're not, you want to discern this thing properly, we can't conflate something that's invisible. Just because it's invisible doesn't mean it's a spiritual thing. Doesn't mean it's a spiritual entity just because you can't see it, or spiritual some kind of deception just because you can't observe it with your eyes, or if it comes in and out of your eyesight, it's there and it's not there, etc. Doesn't mean it's a spiritual thing at all. There are many things that we can't see that we know has nothing to do with angels or demons or God per se, like gravity, like things that are too small, we can't see even hardly with a microscope, but we know they're real. But they're definitely not spiritual, right? So if you had something like a very complex technology to make something invisible, or even abilities of the mind, of things that we don't understand yet about even ourselves or the world around us or how the universe operates, they are inherently possibly invisible, but they are not spiritual. Okay, so we would do well to remember that. All right, here's what we're going to cover in this. If you don't know what these terms are, it's easy enough to find out. When the term Nephilim is the Hebrew word where in Genesis chapter 6, you also see this in the book of Enoch, but a couple places in the Old Testament, but really started in Genesis chapter 6, where you have offspring, you have children of what is termed usually in your Bible there, the sons of God. Those are fallen angels, and they created children with human women. Now, how consensual that was, we don't know. How exactly that worked, we don't know. But the fact is that children were created and that they were giant, much larger people, but human nonetheless. And so they were not, it was not a great situation when they came on the scene. But that is what you would call a Nephal or Nephilim. The Nephal word could mean either fallen or aggressive, like a bully, or that's why the Bible would say mighty men of old or renown. In other words, famous. They were famous people, even down through the ages. People still remember that those things are real. They existed, and that they caused a lot of havoc and trouble on the earth. Those are the Nephilim. And what's Babel? Babel is what you normally would say Babylon, but this is the location in Iraq today, near, well, we don't know exactly where it was, but we know it was, the Bible says, like the plains of Shinar, basically the deserts of Iraq. And there was a very famous incident there as well with a bunch of human beings who have assembled together to do something that God did not want done, that he had to put a stop to by getting them to stop communicating to each other, right? The confusion of speech or the confusion of communication between one another is why it is called Babylon. The Babel meaning to confuse. So that's where God confused the language, as you see in Genesis 11. But that whole period is crucial to this hypothesis, because it's not just that these fallen ones, these fallen angels, okay, these sons of God in Genesis 6, it's not just that they came and created children called the Nephilim or the giants or whatever. And by the way, you could say, well, if they were famous people that had reputations and they were really violent and aggressive and bullying and, all that stuff, yeah, you can make a case that those were what you would base the mythologies of the ancient world on, like the Greek gods, the pantheons of things. You could say has to do with them, and you had to be on the right track. But we have those, not only the creations, however, it's not just about that. In fact, if we, both in Genesis 6 and in Enoch, we find the real problem was not just those beings, was not just those super giant humans that these fallen angels created with women or by impregnated women. But it was the result of them. It was the great wickedness and darkness and violence and evil that came because of that. That was the problem. That was the main issue. And Enoch as well. And we're going to read a bit of it today. And what we have in common, both with the Nephilim era, the fallen angels, and the human beings that came from that, is that they didn't just make children, they actually taught secret knowledge or forbidden knowledge, some kind of knowledge that wasn't known to humanity, to people. Direct from angels to people. So the Nephilim, in that, they kind of were not part of that equation. That's important. So they created these children, but also they taught this knowledge directly to non-Nephilim people. Why? That's my question, number one. Why? You should be asking that as well. In the Tower of Babel situation, you also have, and we're going to get into more of this when we publish it in a full write-up as well, but to see in the text, in the biblical text of the Tower of Babel, that again, it's when God says nothing shall be withholden from them, something like that. If we continue to allow them to build this tower, that's a huge statement. That's not just, they're building a really tall building, let's mess them up so they don't all live together. That's not what happened at all. Something much, much larger was going on, much more profound. And so we should look at that. And what we come to essentially is you have, again, hidden or forbidden knowledge being not only taught to human beings, but now the human beings begin to use it. And whatever this tower was, it was being used for a purpose to advance this knowledge. And it was, you don't want to say threatening to God, but it was definitely not part of the plan, where this is not okay. And God had to put a stop to it directly. That's a big deal. And you just should perk us up into thinking, what sort of hidden secret knowledge, what were they trying to do exactly? How advanced were they getting, basically? Or what were they knowing that was such a big deal? So what we're going to see, I think, is a largely unnoticed history of this cosmic war. And I say cosmic because it's the size of it. From Genesis 6 through 11. So not just the Tower of Babel in that situation, but all the way back to the fallen angels, and how the enemies of God, so it's a war, so you've got God on the other side, how the enemies of God made plans and executed those plans. And again, we can't, well, the enemies of God, that must mean Satan and angels and other things. Humans, the Nephilim themselves, but also human beings. 99.9% of history and the scriptures are about God and humans being evil and humans being the enemies of God. That's why we need Jesus in the Christian theology, because we're eternally separated from God. Without Jesus, there is no way to make up that divide. We are enemies of God. So that's the issue. What if you're not interested in becoming, you want to continue to be God's enemy and you actually have a plan? That's what we're talking about. And like I mentioned a minute ago, what if we can find out or can hypothesize or theorize or assume about the Tower of Babel? What if it actually not maybe stands in its original form, but there's evidence of it still being around? And from that, we can glean some new information. Okay. So while the fallen angels themselves were imprisoned, well, let's back up. The foundation of this hypothesis, as we started last time, it lies in the biblical account of, yes, what we just talked about, angels coming to the earth as described in Genesis 6 in the book of Enoch, but also the New Testament. In Jude and 2 Peter, we have the same mention. So it's not as if it's some old antiquated theory that no one subscribes to, or it's rejected by the Christianity the past 2,000 years. It's not. It's just not talked about. It's kind of pushed off to the side. But it's in the New Testament as well. So according to all those texts, certain angels referred to in the New Testament as those who left their first estate or their proper dwelling or their home. That's in heaven. That's not on the earth. But they left that. They rebelled against God by leaving heaven voluntarily and interacting with humanity. They were not permitted to do that. God didn't send them. So in we can call them angels, and we can. But in the strict sense of the word, to be an angel is to be a messenger. You're sent from God to do something. It really doesn't describe the species or the creature. It actually describes their mission, right? Or what they're doing. So in that case, these fallen angels are really not angels at all. They're whatever they are. They have chosen to rebel, break the rules, and come to the earth directly to do things with human women and to execute some type of plan. And that's where Enoch is really valuable, and I'm talking about the first Enoch, or Ethiopian book of Enoch, which the Ethiopian church still uses today as scripture, by the way. The only one that I know of. But there's some script there. And this version is the Ronald K. Brown interpretation into English, which is, I guess, the R.H. Charles, or some other one is more prevalent. It's the free one on the internet or whatever. This one is not, but I think it's better. It's more modern. So anyway, this is where Enoch is valuable, because it gives us the details of there was a plan. And yes, these fallen ones, there were 200 of them. They came to Mount Hermon, so we're not going to talk about that really, but there's something going on there, and that's where Jesus possibly went to say these are the gates of hell. at this location. But anyway, there was a plan, and they conspired to execute that plan in Genesis 6. It wasn't just some random thing. So these angels, first of all, again, created children. So whether that's interbreeding, like old school regular way, or some other kind of way, we don't know. We know women became pregnant and children were born, and they were very, very different than normal children. You can't hide these Nephilim. You can't, get away in a crowd. They were really, really big. They were really different. So just keep that in mind if we're talking about, if you think there's current, if you think this is still going on, and a lot of people do think that there's, again, fallen angels are continuing to do this process with human beings. I don't know how you can say that, really, considering what we see the result was the first time. But anyway, so they had this offspring. You can call it a hybrid offspring if you'd like, but we know the angels had something to do with it, at least, and that where you'd get your giant Nephilim. But additionally, it wasn't just that procedure or the product of these offspring, but they taught humanity secret knowledge, including technology, metal working. Now, wait a minute. If you're a UFO person, if you want to get to the bottom of this, and you want to say, well, where are these crazy machines coming from? Where is this crazy technology coming from? Where is these crazy metals coming from? Well, they're not really weird metals. They're on the earth, but they're put, and you know what I'm talking about if you've looked into this. They're constructed in such a way that they're at the molecular level, and they're metamaterials. We've even came up with the name. Right? Metamaterials. Well, how does that? That's weird, because we can find this stuff around, but we don't know how it's made. Well, you just so happen to have the details in your ancient texts, and not random ancient texts, and not texts that don't have anything to do with the Bible or contradict it, but the Holy Scriptures and the Book of Enoch. This is the real deal stuff, and really, really old. And you have in there where a fallen creature teaches humanity, not the Nephilim necessarily, although you could assume that they taught them as well, but they're teaching people high technology, including metalwork. And weaponry, by the way. Weaponry. They showed them how to build weapons, swords. Yeah, it says swords and shields, but we're talking high tech. Who didn't know how to build a sword? Or how could you not figure that out? It's stuff that cuts things and is deadly to a human. You can figure that out pretty easy. You don't need an angel to teach you that. You know what I mean? Okay. Weaponry, other forbidden arts. Why is it forbidden? Well, God has a reason for forbidding things, because it corrupts the earth, corrupts the creation of God. Not only the earth itself is corrupted, but the people, his children, the ones he loves and created in his image, these are the ones who get corrupted, and that is the real issue. And if you have a group of super people who are getting super advanced knowledge and forbidden knowledge, and they don't care that it's forbidden, they don't care that God doesn't want them to have it, they don't care about any of that, now we have a situation. So God, in response, I just want to stress this, God has already acted on these angels that came to the earth before Noah's time. Okay, this is before the flood of Noah, right? We all know that. But God imprisoned these fallen ones, the ones who made the Nephilim, until the judgment of the great day of the Lord, right? Until that day of judgment, they can't come out. There's no part 2 for them. Jude and 2 Peter say that. So the Nephilim, though, along with the rest of humanity, were destroyed in the flood. The testimony is either they destroyed each other. Again, this is in Enoch. These giants, these Nephilim, either were sent on each other, they killed each other, they cannibalized each other, literally. Over who knows what. They destroyed each other, or they were killed by the flood itself. Now, they may have had children that or passed along some type of knowledge, okay, because people did survive, right? The Noah and his family. But the spirits of those Nephilim, those giants, remember, they were cursed. You don't get to go to heaven or even do what any other normal person does. You're stuck here. That's what Enoch teaches us, that those spirits of those Nephilim were kept on the earth as what we call demons, what Jesus would call a demon. Those where they came from. That's where they came from. You can't just create a demon. You can't just summon one. There's not millions of them out there. That's actually a spirit of a thing that used to live and was a giant human called a Nephilim. Those are those spirits that can't escape, and they can't go into space, and they can't go anywhere else. They're stuck. All they want to do is inhabit a human body to possess, because they can't find rest. They're just obsessed with it. That's the testimony of the Bible. It might be very strange or different to some people to hear that, but that's it with those Nephilim, okay? But now we have the flood of Noah that's wiped everything out, right? So while the fallen angels were imprisoned and the Nephilim were destroyed, the knowledge they imparted may have survived the flood. Why wouldn't knowledge survive? Maybe Noah's own family was taught. Maybe they didn't believe it or whatever. Or maybe there was some other way that this knowledge survived. Because the flood can't kill knowledge, could it? And that's what they were passing down. They knew bodies would die. They knew even angels could be imprisoned, but knowledge would continue. This hypothesis suggests that the Tower of Babel, often interpreted as an act of human rebellion, which it is, but it could have been an attempt to reconnect with these ones who taught them originally, to reconnect with where those angels came from, or maybe to even continue this program that was begun with the Nephilim. Again, it wouldn't be angels themselves doing it, but maybe humanity got together and said, "Wait, I want to try this again. Let's see how to do this. Let's learn how to do this, because we can get it right this time. We can make creatures of our own. We can make hybrids of some kind, or with this awesome knowledge and technology that we've been given. Maybe we can create something and it would be better, and it would actually serve our purposes." The tower itself. What about the Tower of Babel? It's an extremely, it's intricate. It's necessary in Genesis 11 to the whole issue. It's not just that these humans were getting together and had conspiring against God and were plotting all this stuff. God isn't real specific there. He says anything they desire to do, they'll be able to do. So it has something to do with this tower. What could that possibly be? The tower itself may have served as a symbolic means, or maybe a literal technological means to communicate with or access these entities, or maybe even aside from communicating, to actually get around the rules. Through a portal or an advanced device. What do I mean by that? Well, in the first chapters of Genesis, as many of us are familiar with, God created the heavens and the earth, and he created the way it works, the rules of the game, as it were. The sun, the moon, the stars, the earth, the atmosphere, the water above, the water beneath, how this all happens, how it's all shaped and formed. And so he has rules for those on the earth, Adam and Eve and their children and so forth. I don't know. What if these descendants eventually, who is learning these forbidden knowledge and has no interest in serving God, but want to do their own thing? Thank you very much. There's some things they can't escape, or they can't get away from, or they can't do within the confines of the earth, because God planted humans here, and this is the ground rules, okay, the rules of the game here. What if they could somehow escape the bounds of the earth in, again, a metaphoric way, or a dimensional way, or maybe a physical way? I won't show it here, but there is strong, powerful, shocking connections between an existing structure in the land of Ur. You remember that if you're a Bible student, because Abraham was from there. Right after the flood, right after Genesis 11, the Tower of Babel, then you have the story of Abraham. Same location. Well, there actually is the ruins of a ziggurat, or a pyramid-ish temple, usually it's referred to as a structure called the Ziggurat of Ur. It's still there. It's in the nation of Iraq today, in the deserts there. And there it is. And you can see a very clear shape now. It's been excavated, and archaeology teams have been there for a few decades now, I believe, trying to, kind of restore and not destroy it, and see what's going on there. Well, many interesting things have happened there, including allegedly, like there is photos. It happened. There was a visit to this ziggurat for some reason by the United States Armed Forces during Desert Storm or Desert Shield, or one of these operations after Saddam Hussein was overthrown in Iraq. I can't remember the year. Somebody will correct me on this, but they were there for something, and they went inside apparently, and nobody knows anything after that. It's classified, but it's still there. And the shocking part is the moon. There's researchers and folks have done awesome work on this. And Mike Barra, I believe, is the one who actually put this on a screen. That blew me away. There's a side-by-side, and the area of the moon called the Daedalus region of the moon. There's what's called the Daedalus ziggurat. And if you put side by side, which there is a photo of the ziggurat of Ur in Iraq and the ziggurat on Daedalus on the moon, they look extremely similar. Extremely similar. Just so happens that this ziggurat is on the far side of the moon, not the near side. The far side of the moon, some people call it the dark side. The far side of the moon never faces the earth. We never see it. We never have seen it throughout human history, as far as I know. Right? But yet this ziggurat is on the opposite end. And again, I just want to throw it out there. It just so happens, if you were to make a straight line through the moon, And the other side of the surface of the moon from the ziggurat on the far side, if you came through the opposite end on the near side, there just happens to be, looks like a portal there. It's a hole. An anomalous hole. I believe things have been seen emerging from that place. So put 2 and 2 together for the purpose of this hypothesis. Say, wait a minute. Is it really possible that you had these human beings, not angels, not Nephilim, human beings who attempted way back when, right after the flood, to get together, literally, to conspire against God to do some great, fantastic, super technological or something that is so urgent and pressing that God had to stop them? They were at such a level of knowledge, of understanding stuff, and I'm going to read from Enoch now to maybe tell us what kind of stuff, to the point where he had to stop them. Otherwise, there was nothing they couldn't accomplish. And that's not holding down human innovation and human dreams and whatever. That's silly, okay? That's an atheist talking. No, this is something this is a threat. This is a threat to the whole order. So whatever God's doing, this is in opposition. And it has something to do with knowledge, technology, warfare, and metals, for example. And by the way, that part of the book of Genesis, from Adam and Eve right through to the Tower of Babel, right, or through Genesis 6 at least, where we had these visitations and these Nephilim and so forth, the lifespan of human beings was much longer. The lifespan of people was very, very long indeed. Hundreds and hundreds of years was an average life, according to the genealogy in Genesis, both of Adam's family through Seth, right? Cain and Abel. Abel was killed by Cain. Seth was their child after that. So through Seth, but also through Cain, there were long lifespans. So it's possible that after God disrupted this Tower of Babel project, those who possessed this forbidden knowledge went underground. Maybe literally, but certainly figuratively. Right? God didn't kill them. God didn't destroy them. God didn't. In fact, it doesn't even say he destroyed the tower. He just said he confused their communications. It says their language. Now, if they had high technology, if you said today confused, they couldn't communicate anymore. That's saying a lot more than is being said, I believe, when it says confuse their language. But they went underground at that point if they wanted to continue the project, right? So they had incredible knowledge, incredible technology, incredible plans, to the point where there might be getting to the moon, for crying out loud. Maybe this is why God wanted to stop it, because, wait a minute, I only set these things up for people on the earth. If they get off of the earth, they'd have I don't want to say a legal case, but they could maybe do things that they couldn't do there and accomplish things they could never accomplish and screw up the plan that I had. It's possible. So if they went underground, I'm not saying everyone at the tower continued and wanted to, continue to with this evil plan, but maybe they did, and maybe I'm sure some of them did. So those who possessed this knowledge went underground. Now you would call that what? A hidden civilization. Breakaway civilization. Now that term today in the UFO world Richard Dolan and others have used it to describe modern humans breaking away, like away from governments and having their own like kind of oligarchy or whatever, full of super rich high technology. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an actual breakaway hidden civilization from thousands and thousands of years ago. What if they started the plan then? We're talking, how many years ago are we talking now? 5,000 years. What if you had a 5,000 year head start on today with knowledge that was way more advanced than anyone else on the earth? And wisdom and technology, not wisdom, technology and weapons, etc. Couldn't you surmise and see the potential for what we're seeing with the UFO phenomenon today is because, or couldn't you see that, wow, if somebody had a 5,000 year head start and they already had high tech and high knowledge of anything and they're trying to escape the planet or whatever, what would they look like now? Or how would their operation and plan look now? What would it look like if you encountered them? To me, this makes imminently more sense, even if it might be totally crazy and you never heard such a thing, and it might be wrong, but this makes more sense to me than imagining that it's a extraterrestrial race that just so happens to look like us and just so happens to stay in the shadows all the time and never want to be videoed or whatever. And why are they doing what they're doing? And is it about us? Is it about the planet? Is it about this or that? Well, that's a much farther bridge to cross, connection to make than this hypothesis is. So they went underground. Hidden civilization, if they were equipped with advanced technology and potentially long lifespans, they may have continued to develop in secret. Where, you would say, well, maybe they have the technology to stay literally hidden. Maybe they found a way to live underground, literally underground, under the surface of the earth. What if they found a way to live in the ocean? Or even have some kind of base of operation on the moon. It sounds wacky. Or does it? Let's look at the book of Enoch as we close out this second section called Nephilim to Babel of the hypothesis. In chapter 6 of the book of Enoch, you have basically and they're very short. Let me just read some of it. You basically have a expansion or repetition of Genesis chapter 6. I encourage you to read Genesis chapter 6, study it. And it came to pass when the children of men, again, this is from the translation by Brown of book of Enoch. And it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied in those days and were born to them beautiful and comely daughters, the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them and said to one another, come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men and get us children. So they had a desire from heaven. There's no ambiguity here. I know some people will say Genesis 6 is about other people or some kind of race, from Seth or the sons of God don't mean angels. There's no reason to think that it refers to other humans. It's silly, actually. There's no ambiguity whatsoever in Enoch. And by the way, you say Enoch is a some say it's a forgery or it's a Christian document. That is a lie. It is a total fabrication. We know for a fact it was discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls in the caves of Qumran, which means it is before the time of Jesus by at least several hundred years. And so we're talking about Old Testament times now. And if this is just is what it says it is, which is authored by Enoch, the seventh of Adam. By the way, who says Enoch, the seventh of Adam, wrote something? The New Testament says that Enoch, the seventh of Adam, the original, wrote something. And in chapter 1 of this book, that's where Jude is quoting from. Okay. Anyway, just to give a little weight to the fact that, well, it's not in the Bible, I don't have to believe it. Reconsider. This book, not every book, in fact, not even other Enochs, okay, this one. And the angels, the children of the heavens, saw and lusted after them. Come, let us choose wives from among the children of men and get us children. And Semjaja, these are names of these angels, who was their leader, said to them, I fear you will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone will have to pay the penalty for this sin. So he's saying, oh, y'all saying you want to do it now, but you're all going to blame me. I'm the only one who's going to do it, and I'm going to get punished. They all answered him and said, let us all swear an oath and bind ourselves by mutual imprecations not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then they all swear together and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And they were in total 200 who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon. And they called it Mount Hermon because they had sworn and bound themselves mutual imprecations upon it. So it's literally saying there is a conspiracy, a plan by 200 fallen angels. They decided together that they were going to leave heaven together and go make children with human women and bear the responsibility for it together. If there was punishment, they were going to take it together, and they did. And it goes on and names these the leaders. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 15, 16. There's about 20 named. I'll spare you the names. Okay, these are the chiefs of 10. So there were 20 leaders, each over 10. That's 200. And one of them is called Azazel. Azazel is actually in the book of Leviticus, usually translated as scapegoat. It's a very interesting passage in Leviticus about sacrificing and the goat that goes to Azazel. Anyway, here he is in the book of Enoch. Azazel taught men, this is chapter 8 of Enoch. Azazel taught men to make swords, knives, and shields, breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them. He just told you this Azazel character, this fallen angel, this commander of the fallen angels before Noah's flood, teaching men, taught men, not taught the Nephilim, not the children that they bore to the women, taught other humans, not their kids, how to make weapons and work with metals. Ornaments, the use of antimony and the beautifying of the eyelids and all kinds of costly stones and coloring tinctures. Now, these are very funny words. And like, oh, it taught women to put on makeup? Okay, but what's really going on here? And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray and became corrupt in all their ways. Who's they? The people, the human beings, the regular humans. They believed, they learned, they were taught this, they learned it, believed it, and practiced it. Semjaza taught enchantments, sorcery, spells, special things to get around the laws of nature, as it were. Taught enchantments, root cuttings. Others taught astrology, the constellations, the knowledge of clouds, signs of the earth, signs of the sun, and the course of the moon. Not the signs of the moon, the course of the moon, how it travels. Maybe that there's a dark side or a far side that you never see. Take advantage of that. As the men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven. Skipping over a little into chapter 9, this is where it starts to say God's response, where he actually sends archangels, again, the ones who were actually sent by God, so they're angels. The chief, the generals, basically, of God's army. They are named Michael. We know Michael from the Old Testament and New Testament. Gabriel, we know Gabriel from the Old and the New Testament, but also two that we don't hear about, Uriel and Raphael. And these are consistently Hebrew names, so it doesn't surprise me that this could be a legitimate list. He sent them after to do something about these guys. Verse 6, you see what Azazel has done, who has taught all unrighteousness on earth and revealed the eternal secrets which were preserved in heaven, which men were striving to learn. I just want to leave you with that. That's chapter 9, verse 6 of Enoch. And then it goes on to say what happened to Azazel and the rest of these guys, what was done and all that. But you see what Azazel has done. Taught all unrighteousness. Taught, again, not to the Nephilim, okay, taught to human beings, unrighteousness on earth, and revealed eternal secrets. He revealed secrets to human beings which were preserved in heaven. I mean, they were meant to stay there. That's why it's forbidden. Eternal secrets. Preserved in heaven, which men were striving to learn. That is the crux. That regular humans, regular men, striving to learn, we want this knowledge so bad. We are trying so hard to achieve this secret forbidden knowledge. Azazel, for example, gave it to them. And so what did they do with it? They made the Tower of Babel, for example. That's what I'm suggesting. That's what it seems is the implication. So whether it be, we didn't talk about the Garden of Eden, but you can, all the way back to the serpent, Satan, in the Garden of Eden, or the fallen angels in Genesis 6, or the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11, all resulted in human beings, men, not supernatural things, not angels, not demons, men acquiring hidden knowledge that is used to oppose God. That is the connection from Nephilim to Babel in the hypothesis. Okay, let's see what questions y'all have. I know I'm not ignoring you, but I did want to present that because we're going to edit this up into a long form presentation with all 4 parts eventually, hopefully in just a couple weeks. We may have already answered this, but let's go. MS, our brother in India. What hidden or forbidden knowledge did the watchers of fallen angels teach regular humans created in the image of God? Well, I went over a couple of those. I think we answered that. Tower of Babel is still around. I think we answered that. Potentially, we don't know for sure. But that ziggurat of Ur is really still around. And yes, it is in exactly where it should be, according to the biblical account in Iraq. In other words, if it is the tower or the remnant of the Tower of Babylon, it's exactly where Ur of the Chaldeans would be, or southern Babylonia, southern Mesopotamia, right? Did the fallen angels leave the first heaven or the highest heaven or the second heaven? That's getting a little in the weeds. We don't know. I don't know. But I would basically think either one doesn't really matter, because the fact is they came to the earth and started interacting with humans is the problem. Or explain to me why it would matter. Oh, cool. I'm interested. Enoch 1 is fascinating, yes. And again, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about first Enoch or Enoch 1, because there are things called second and third and fourth Enoch, which are bogus. They are bogus. They are not related to first Enoch. I mean, it's some attempt at fiction. And it's not in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and there's no evidence that they're pre-Christian, and there's no evidence they're BC in any way. So, in my opinion, I mean, you can read them if you want to, but I think it's a huge waste of time. Don't even bother. First Enoch, definitely worth it. Loanne says, interesting with a interesting face, learning face, or scratching the chin. Yes, interesting. Yeah, I agree. It is interesting. I must say, other than, I mean, this ties in obviously to the Bible and to God and Jesus, but as a subject, this is pretty much the most interesting thing there is. Isn't there a legend or an actually real event that after the flood, someone found writings and shared it instead of destroying them? I'll have to look that up. You do have to look that up, because I don't think I remember that at all. Makes one rethink the journey to the center of the earth. Well, right, the fictional story, Journey to the Center of the Earth, where there were actually things under the earth. Yeah. Jules Verne, right. Yeah. He's one of the original science fiction writers. That was one of the first things he wrote, right? Cool says 200 watchers landed on Mount Hermon in northern Israel. That's right. They are now bound in gloomy Tartarus. That's what the New Testament calls it. Yes. Correct. Yes. The Azazel creature maybe in a different place, maybe not, but we talked about this a while ago now when we did the book of Revelation, verse by verse. We went through this possibility that this location where he called Dudael in Enoch, where at least this Azazel was kept, maybe all of them, it could be in Syria, under Syria in a volcano. Azazel taught human beings how to make weapons of war. He is the scapegoat, Leviticus 16. Exactly. That's what I was referring to earlier. Yep. Mm-hmm. And again, you wouldn't think, look, Cain killed Abel with a rock. Right? So humans never needed the desire to kill one another. They never needed to be taught how to kill. But to make it really easy with advanced knowledge of metals and things, that gives me a real lot of pause, okay? Because you don't need divine knowledge or secret knowledge of heaven to bang a piece of, melt down something hard and make it into a sword. I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. That's not what the angels were teaching them. Raphael's mentioned in the book of Tobit and the Apocrypha. There you go. So Apocrypha is intertestamental, right, between the Old and New Testament period, like the Dead Sea Scroll era. So he apparently is mentioned there. So there's some validity to that, or additional evidence of Raphael being an angel or a holy one in other literature. Okay. All right. Any other questions, you guys? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up for this episode, and we will await next week and chapter 3 or part 3, which we are calling, what are we calling it? UFOs, orbs, and cover-ups. Okay, so to bring the history or the possible origins of what this phenomenon is, to bring it forward from where it started to where it is now. We're going to do that next time. Okay. UFOs, orbs, and cover-ups. And then part 4 will be called the end game. All right. So, again, Lord willing, that's the next 2 weeks here on your Thursday mornings. And then we'll cut the plan is to cut this into a long form video with all the parts together, approximately the first week of April. And then after that, a full write-up of what you're hearing, including many, many sources. If anyone cares, I guess some people will, about how we came up with this, how I and my partner came up with this. Let's just say it was not an instant thing. It didn't happen in a couple of days or weeks or even months. But yeah, there's a lot of sourcing that we can share. Bond Servant says, what's interesting is like watching legend stories from China, and they all use secret powers and alchemy. Reminds me of the Enoch. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a common thread, isn't it? The old ancient stories and kind of gaming the system, secret powers, and yeah, that's something humans always have wanted. And maybe there's some kind of latent memory, or I don't want to call new age or whatever, but some like a collective memory or recollection, or just faint understanding of that this was a thing, and we're not making it up, and we're not any different than our ancestors, basically, in wanting these things, and maybe it has been done. It's not made up. Stories sound pre-flood mentality. Yeah, we do. Hey, there's Madam Rex. What's happening on X? By the way, sorry, I forgot to mention at the beginning. Please share this on YouTube. That would be extremely helpful. Anyone who's watching this right now, especially those who are commenting, please do me a favor and copy and paste this address to the YouTube video into your social channels. You yourself write a little note and say, I, Bondservant, I, Mokul, whatever, recommend this. This is great. This is awesome. You need to watch this. This is a totally new idea. Share it with your people. Please. That would be fantastic. Okay. Legends from the ancient world around the globe substantiate first Enoch. That's a bold statement, Madam Rex, and seems to be right. They talk also a lot about God's angelic type folk. They do. Definitely. Now, it doesn't mean every account in every ancient culture is factual to the letter, right? We don't want to assume that. But there are commonalities for sure. And guys, remember, even if this hypothesis is true, or even partially true, then the super advanced, visitors in UFOs, or from the heavens, or from other places, other dimensions, or what have you, don't assume that those are angels. Don't assume that those are the fallen angels. Don't assume that those are Nephilim. It could be these humans that took this tech and took this knowledge and took these weapons and took this metallurgy, visiting those other civilizations to be worshipped as, by the way. And I almost forgot to include, there's a little write-up that my partner did that was really does an excellent job of this. Let me just read it. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. Darn. Sorry about that. This is about the Tower of Babel, and we didn't go into all the details about that and how what they built it for and what they may have been trying to do is even more interesting than we were saying. Okay, here we go. Here's what I was thinking of my original notes. Dig this out. So these people have this fantastic knowledge. They've gained this high technology. Maybe we're working on a race of super, a new creature. Maybe we're going to develop a life form that seems, that is basically alive, but it's more like a robot. More like we're talking about the Greys last time. Remember how this is a thing now that we've learned to do, or that our progenitors, taught us how to do, or they made things that maybe we can try to reproduce that. We're going to try to be, from this point on, we're going to be superior. We're going to present ourselves as a superior to every other lowly person on the earth, right? We're going to be their masters. We're going to let them think whatever they want to think, by the way. If you say, oh, these are aliens from another planet, you're angels, you're gods, that's all fine. That's all fine with these other humans who have now attained this level of knowledge, of technology, of weapons, all that. They are, by right, I mean, they think, well, we are superior to them. We know all this other stuff. We've got all this other things. We know how to do all this stuff. We are their masters, their gods, their angels. Almost like if they want to think we're a different species of, let them. In fact, we're going to create things that look a little off, to mess with them, or maybe to study them, or maybe or to not study them, but to advance our plans. And to protect us. We want a level of security between us and them. We don't want to be found out, right? That's the kind of the goal. We can't be a separate society if we're discovered. So we got to, even if they get close to finding us, or to seeing our stuff, our technology that we're using, or the transportation that we're using, or the weapons, or whatever, if they get close to it, let's just make sure they don't find us. Let's make sure that we've got other, a fall guy in there, or maybe we're designing different creatures and things that are kind of alive, or autonomous. You would call it an AI system, okay, or an autonomous biological system that we're going to send to do this stuff. And if there is any interaction, we're going to show them that. If I'm not being clear, let me know. But anyways, so yeah, we can be like gods to them, or angels, or whatever else, whatever they want to think, that's fine. We're going to go with that. But the end of the day, they're just humans. That's your hypothesis. Madam Rex says giants, cannibals, secret tech, global accounts of the ancient world. There's a lot of overlap. Yeah. Yep. Same for Egyptian, Greco-Roman legends. Correct. Native Americans. Correct. You're talking about their pantheons and creation accounts or flood accounts. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities. Underground civilizations from the Grand Canyon. Never heard that one. Antarctica. That's interesting for sure, because there definitely is anomalous stuff going on under the ice of Antarctica, and has been for a long time. For sure. Out of the box, perhaps, but you're in out of the box area right now, right? But if these underworld folk are real with high tech, kind of explains our sudden explosion of knowledge the past 100 years. about, or in other words, well, we're catching up basically. Now, some would say that the reason why we've had such an explosion since, let's say, the 1940s in technologies, 30s and 40s, is because of these others basically giving it to us or helping us achieve it for whatever reason, because most of it's destructive reasons, right? Atomic weapons and delivery systems and you know, all the aerospace stuff is usually for military purposes. But yeah, that's part of the premise of one of the source materials that we use for this hypothesis is from The Day After Roswell by Colonel Corso, and his hypothesis is that many of the technological leaps that we made in the past 80 years have been directly because of the Roswell crash, because of the debris and the things and the bodies that were recovered, that we learned so much from that, even if it's only a tiny fraction of understanding about it. Like, we couldn't figure most of it out, but what we could figure out, we made whole new stuff. And our leaps and, our technology, all of a sudden, and our understanding and our abilities just grew by leaps and bounds because of what we found in 1947 and earlier. Now, is that an accident? Did we shoot that down? Was there a conflict where they crashed on accident, or that on purpose? That's an open question. But again, Corso would say obviously he's no longer with us, but he would say, yeah, there's these leaps in technology. Most of it is been because of what we found that day and those years. But maybe not. Maybe we're just catching up and getting to a point where we're almost, maybe not even, but getting, enough where they're going to try to interact and influence more directly. Maybe they're done being hidden. Maybe they want to come out in a more public way. So we'll see. All right. That's it, my friends. It's been over an hour here, so definitely enough time to chew on. Please share this, and we'll see you next time for part 3 of the hypothesis. For Wings of the Eagle, this is Christopher Manti.